Telecommunication company have been the early starters in the open innovation arena. Companies like Telefonica in Spain and Latin America, Orange in Europe and Middle East and Africa, and others have been sort of pioneers in testing the collaboration between the world of corporates and the world of startups, also known as startup as well. And today we will deep dive into one of these players. The focus of our conversation will be TIM, formerly known as Telecom Italia. And I have the pleasure to have with me today Carlo Tursi. Carlo is the CEO of TIM Ventures, that is the corporate venture capital arm of TIM, and is also head of business development for TIM. Hi, Carlo.
Hi, Alberto. Hi, everyone.
So it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you because, as mentioned, telcos have been the early movers, the early starters in the open innovation arena. And again, if I can recall the history of the startup ecosystem in Italy, I think there is a lot of Telecom Italia behind that. I remember the first iconic program called Il Tour dei Mille, looking for the new 1,000 people, not trying to unifying Italy, but rather trying to fostering innovation inside Italy. I remember all the most iconic entrepreneurs, young people wearing these red jackets. I remember Working Capital, that has been one of the landmark acceleration programs in Italy. I think that's been probably the Italian version of Wire and Orange Fab. The physical spaces in the different cities, from Milan to Bologna, Catania, Rome. And again, it's been a lot. And I believe that, honestly speaking, Telecom Italia contributed a lot in educating the startup ecosystem. But what we have seen, and not just in Italy, is that starting from the past few years, there's been an overall refocusing, an overall reorganization of the company. And with that, it comes also a different approach to open innovation, corporate venturing, startup corporate collaboration. So that is exactly what we would like to deep dive in our conversation today. So first of all, I think it will be beneficial just to introduce TIM. What are your current figures as a company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alberto, and thanks for having me. So for those who don't know TIM is the leading telco operator in Italy and one among the leading operators in Brazil. We're active both in the fixed mobile arena as well as in the cloud infrastructure and data center space. We offer services, products, both for communication and for entertainment, as well as in the ICT space. TIM has, I haven't been with TIM for a long time, but I think it's definitely fair to say that, as you mentioned, Alberto, TIM has played a very central role. It has been, in a way, a pioneer in fostering entrepreneurship in Italy, and also in fostering collaboration between corporates, large corporations, and startups in our country. If you think about it, a bit more than a decade ago, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Italy was just in its infancy. Really, it was moving its first baby steps in a way, and already back then, Telecom Italia was quite active in this space with some of the initiatives that you mentioned. TIM Working Capital was among the very first startup accelerators to be launched in our country. And it was launched in a time in which there was a very, very strong and urgent need for accelerators that would help really entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs have a place to go, have a way forward that they could see and visualize that would allow them to understand how to move the first steps towards building a company, and how to get the right type of advice, support, the resources that would help them build the first critical foundational blocks of their startups. Team Working Capital was a program that also had, this physical accelerators, as you mentioned, and all around the country, all over the country. And it as an initiative, it was started over 10 years ago. So really in the infancy of what we consider today Italy's startup ecosystem. Not only was Team a pioneer in this arena, it was also a pioneer in the corporate venture capital arena in Italy. Team Ventures, which is the...
And still you are, because there are not that many others. And so
there are many others. There are definitely quite a few today, and that's an encouraging trend, and that's an encouraging signal to read. But Team Ventures was definitely among the first corporate venture capital funds to be launched in Italy already over, I want to say, 7 years ago. It was started as it's the vehicle that I lead today. It was started over 7 years ago. Obviously, back then the focus was on investing in very early stage startups, which was both inevitable in a way, given the if you look at where the startup ecosystem in Italy was back then. There weren't that many late-stage companies to invest in, frankly.
And was as a sort of backup of the corporate accelerator program, working capital.
Correct, exactly. So it was both inevitable, but also consequential to the team working capital strategy, because the idea that had been built back then was really to accelerate batches of startups, and then to pick some of the most promising ones and actually continue investing in them through Team Ventures, through the Team Ventures program. And that has given birth to an important generation of startups, and I would say even more importantly, to a generation of Italian entrepreneurs, some of which have succeeded with those startups, some of which haven't, but all of which have gone on to be involved in the startup ecosystem, potentially founding new companies, new startups, and some of them learning from their successes, some of them learning from their mistakes, as it should be in a healthy startup ecosystem. And so, definitely, I would say that Team Telecom Italia has played a critical role. It was a pioneer in this space, and when you're a pioneer, then you also need to be, if you want to keep your edge, you need to be ready to understand changes in the market, understand changes in the ecosystem, and to adapt to them, or even to anticipate them, if you want to keep that position. And that's some of what we have gone about to do in the past year and a half, really, a bit revamping our strategy. And there's two components, I would say, to what you briefly touched on, as our new approach, new strategy, change of strategy. There is two converging forces, I would say. One is overall change, transformation, dynamics that are happening in the telecommunication space. And the other one really is what is happening in the startup ecosystem, especially in Italy, but I would say in Europe more broadly. And so two converging trends that brought us to a change of strategy. So if that's okay, I'll spend a few words on,
yes, please,
on what has been happening and how that impacted our new strategy.
And to deep dive what is currently you guys are doing, but it's important to understand this transition that I think is because when a company like yours has such, let's say, long history, because 10 years in the open innovation arena is a geological era, and so it means a lot. The typical misperception from the ecosystem is start to look at what you're doing today with the lenses of what you were doing the past few years. Then I don't know, because you have done a lot, as one very, very visible, so very, very well known. And so probably the typical perception from the ecosystem is team Telecom Italia having an accelerator program and a seed VC fund backing it up. And now it's a totally different story. It is important to understand the transition and understand where you guys are headed. What is the new strategy? That is the part that we want also to highlight, because there is, as part of this transition, there is also a more broader opening to the global startup ecosystems. And so it's important also to help our CXO of startup scale-ups internationally. That might be an opportunity to cooperating with a group like yours. As mentioned, it's not just Italy, but also you are the second, if I'm not wrong, 70+ million subscriber in Brazil. Correct. Second operator after Vivo. And so there is a huge opportunity of collaboration, potential opportunity of strategic plays, and that is the part we want to deep dive with you today.
Yeah. Totally. In order to understand this, first of all, we need to, think for a second of what has happened in the telco, or what has been happening to telcos over the past 10 years or so. The past 10 years have seen rise of OTTs, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world. It has seen, therefore, a commoditization in a way of what used to be the core telecommunication product, connectivity, and as a consequence, it has pushed telcos all around the world. This is not true only for Italy, to look at diversifying and expanding their suites of products and services in order to branch into adjacent services that are higher value-added services, in order exactly to be able to go back to a more competitive position towards some of the global players we're up against these days. So as a consequence, also TIM changed its strategy, and the title of our 3-year business plan, of our corporate group 3-year business plan, the latest one, is Beyond Connectivity, and that's what our strategy is about. Our strategy is all about expanding into adjacent sectors, be it cloud, artificial intelligence, be it cybersecurity, be it Internet of Things in several of its declinations, from industrial to retail to smart cities, etc. And so, first of all, think of TIM as a company that is not only a connectivity provider, not only a pure telco player, but it's becoming more and more a player that is offering a suite of products and services in the ICT space. Now, combine this with what has happened to the startup ecosystem locally and internationally over the past 10 years. It is fair to say that over the past 10 years, the European startup ecosystem has definitely reached a new level of maturity. What was absolutely necessary, fundamental back then, which was more accelerators. 10 years ago, we needed more accelerators because we needed to help entrepreneurs get their startups off the ground, is now something that is more established. There's networks of accelerators all over the world, also all over our country, Italy, and so there's probably a different role that corporates can and should play in the entrepreneurial and startup arena. What is that role? That role is really to be one of the key elements that will help startups do the next steps. Startups that have already been accelerated, startups that have already developed their products, startups that have already gone to market. Now the role of corporates, in our view, is really that of helping those startups go to the next step and help them scale their business, help them scale their sales, their product, etc. And in this is the perspective that led us to reconsider both our WCap, we call it in Italy, which is just a short for working capital, but also our Team Ventures approach. WCap is really nothing else than our open innovation program. And so how do we do open innovation? We've moved away from acceleration. We've moved away from physical accelerators. We think that that's not a type of service that is in short supply in the market these days, and that's not the sweet spot that we see for a player like us, like TIM, to be able to contribute significantly to the overall growth of the startup ecosystem in Italy. Therefore, we have moved to collaborating with scaleups, with slightly larger, more mature startups that have already gone through the first hurdles of their life and that are now at a juncture where they really need that boost. They really need those strong muscles to come in and help them go to the next level. And we think that TIM, as a company with with the assets that it can offer, what assets can TIM offer? Well, TIM has over 30 million subscribers, so a very large customer base in Italy, and many more in Brazil, 70 million, as you mentioned. TIM with a very widespread infrastructure, with a very widespread retail network, or depending on the type of service that you're looking at, depending on the type of company that you're looking at, a player like TIM, a very established player like TIM, definitely has a lot to offer. And so we believe that a player like us can really help some of these scale-ups, accelerate the growth of their business in the phase they're in. And so in that's the perspective that led us to turn our open innovation effort into an effort to foster collaboration with scale-ups locally and internationally.
Yes, just two comments on what you just said that I think is super relevant. Number one is the step of moving, looking not just to Italy, but looking broadly internationally, I think is needed because also if you look at the data of scale-up distribution in the globe, Italy, unfortunately, not yet is at the forefront. So it's natural to find more suitable, mature candidate target companies elsewhere. And that's why all the corporates are looking globally and are looking specifically at the ecosystem where there is a stronger density of scale-ups. And that's, again, the US and Silicon Valley is certain countries of Europe that are definitely more ahead than us, and also some other emerging countries like South Korea, that is growing significantly, and other locations. The other point is that you mentioned that you moved away from accelerators and physical places, physical incubators. This is a common trend that we also see and experience in other of your competitors. So Telefonica has been through quite significant restructuring of Wire. That has been one of the landmark initiatives at global level. And now Wire in itself is mostly a micro VC as they define themselves, rather than a traditional accelerator programs running around batches. That is the old fashioned way of running accelerators. And by the way, corporate accelerators in general are definitely trending down because in reality they failed to produce results, all of them. And so actually they contributed, as we discussed before, a lot in educating a new generation of entrepreneurs. Right. But in terms of the ability of produce concrete results for the parent company, for the company who are about to organize them, the results has been quite poor, because working with very early stage solutions in their infancy, in the infancy of the ecosystem, has mostly been more an educational effort rather than something that able to bring home some concrete results. And so I think the evolution that you went through is something that is pretty consistent with what we see internationally, looking at other players. Think about Deutsche Telekom with Uber. Think about Orange with Orange Fab. Yes, some programs are still there, but if you compare the same program in 2015 and the program today, we are comparing not apple with apples. We are seeing totally different things. So I would say that traditional corporate accelerators are long gone, and now it's time for moving to different kind of partnership. And I believe that the opportunity for scale-ups to work with a company like you is that both of you are looking for the same goal. that is producing results, putting results on the ground. And then you say you have pretty large subset of assets that you can definitely offer them. Access to a large consumer base, infrastructure, networks, the ability to be melted into value-added services that you are all the interest to distribute.
And we do talk a lot with several of our peers that you mentioned, Telefonica, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, and others. We exchange views, we compare notes on what we're doing, and we see similar trends, we see similar learnings over the past few years. So we are thinking similarly in many ways. We have some differences, obviously. We're different companies in different markets, but yeah, there are a lot of commonalities among some of us internationally.
Let's shift the conversation to the other pillar, that is the investing pillar, because this is what we discussed. That is the new WCap is the partnership, what we call the venture client model. Venture client meaning your goal is to becoming a potential to start working with startups, with scale-ups, and distributing their services. But there is the other part, that is the investing part, the CVC. So let's discuss about the structure of team ventures.
Yeah.
If I got it right, it's not properly a CVC. It's mostly investing off balance. Can you give us some numbers, some references?
That's right. So we are a fully owned subsidiary of TIM. So it is effectively balance sheet investments. Now, our strategy, first of all, let me touch on the international point. You mentioned it earlier, and I think it is important. There are a couple of things. Technology is international by definition. Technology breaks barriers, and so it would be extremely limiting for us to be looking only at one specific market. Now, bear in mind, we are, the I in our name in TIM stands for Italia, stands for Italy, and we are fundamentally an Italian company, one of the largest Italian corporations, and we also feel a responsibility in a way towards contributing to the development of our country and of technological development of our country, advancement of new solutions, and also contributing to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But in a world in which the competitive arena is global, we think that the international angle is fundamental for us to be able to better play that contributor role. And how does that come? That comes in two ways. One, best technologies can be born anywhere. They can be born in Italy, and there's a lot of excellent entrepreneurs, researchers developing new technologies all the time in our country. But they can be developed elsewhere in the world. And I think that part of our role as a leading player in some of the sectors that I mentioned earlier is also to be able to spot and intercept key technologies and key trends, also when they're happening outside of our borders, and sort of bring them here. Developing collaborations, investing in these technologies also helped us bring the Italian market to a different level of awareness and visibility towards technologies that are being developed elsewhere in the world. But also it comes in a second way, and I think one of our recent direct investments of TIM Ventures is a testament to this. So let me maybe start from this. We recently closed the Series C round of Satispay. Satispay is an Italian scale-up in the fintech space, one of the leading, let's say, payment e-wallet providers all over Europe. Amazing company with very strong entrepreneurs and great growth numbers over the past few years. And TIM Ventures specifically played a lead investor role in Satispay's Series C round. We were not an investor before. So we invested for the first time in the Series C of the company. But interestingly enough, among the main investors of that round, we were the only Italian one. So the international angle comes also by our role of, let's say, giving that important local perspective to international investors who are looking at, putting their capital into the Italian market. Alongside Team Ventures, the Satispay round was invested by key global players such as Square, a San Francisco, California company.
Yeah, our neighbors, yes.
Right, exactly. Or Tencent, Asian Chinese conglomerate, really, which is also the company behind WeChat, among other things. And then we had a London-based fund and another US-based fund. And so all these players obviously did their own due diligence on Satispay, each of them. We don't need to teach them anything on this, but they definitely were very interested in seeing that Team Ventures was invested, the team through Team Ventures was investing in Satispay, and they definitely were very interested in hearing our feedback, our local feedback on the company, in order to, sort of give them that additional comfort and confidence on the fact that, they were in fact, making the right bet. And so I think this is part of the role that we can play, help attract international capital and bring it into the Italian market.
Let me stop you here, because I think this has been very, very visible move, and actually it raised a lot of questions. Is why, again, after it has been a sort of your coming back visible and way on the CVC market, very, very high profile international operation. As you mentioned, you were leading the Series C, so not involved before. That means that has been quite a strategical decision, because one thing is, okay, we is a Series C, we're also being in the seed A and B, and now we're just paying our pro rata and moving forward. And so that is not exactly strategic choice. We are on board and we continue to stay there. Probably has been a prior decision of someone else, has been a good decision, we continue. But this has been a brand new decision to jump on board on something that is one of the potentially poster children of the Italian startup ecosystem, and coming on board with a leading role. And beyond your intention to also to wave the Italian flag still in this international round, what have been the strategic decision? Give us some colors behind the deal, if anything that might be disclosed, obviously. Nothing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The digital payment space is absolutely strategic and critical for a player like Team. I mentioned some of the order of magnitude numbers around our customer base, so you can only imagine the number of payments and transactions that Team processes every day, really, and you can imagine how the transition, which has been accelerated over the past year and a half, the transition towards more and more digital forms of payments, so transition away from cash, but also in a way the start of the transition away from credit cards in their at least in their traditional form has been accelerating, and that trend impacts every company that touches a lot of consumers, every company that processes a lot of payments, and it definitely touches us, Team, in many different ways. And so we see that this transition, this revolution really in the payment space as a threat and an opportunity at the same time. And so we wanted to look at it as an opportunity, and in order to do it, we wanted to make sure we would partner with one of what we believe are the winners, the emerging winners of this new game, of this new paradigm really that is starting to transform the way we think about payments. And so we look at the market, we identified Satispay as the player that, we engaged in conversation for many months with them. And we identified them as the player that could sort of walk hand in hand with Team. Mind you, companies of very different sizes, very different magnitudes. But Satispay is not a very early stage startup. It is a company already. It has over 100 employees. It has processes in place, and it is able to talk and to work even with the big, sometimes slow, sometimes a bit bureaucratic. We try not to, but sometimes we inevitably are, at least a bit more than them, a bigger corporation than them. So they are able to talk with us, they are able to work with us, and we decided to sort of pick them as the partner that will walk hand in hand with us, as together we try and transform the Italian payment ecosystem, the Italian digital payment ecosystem.
Can you just briefly remind the anatomy of the deal, the size?
Yeah, please. It was overall it was a 90+ million euros deal. Part of it was secondary though, but as I mentioned, it was a deal where Team Ventures, Square, Tencent, and a UK fund called Lightrock were among the largest investors, alongside other smaller ones, not minor though, because of their role, and a lot of the previous investors who kept, investing in the current round. And this round is both aimed at allowing Satispay to grow significantly in its core market, that is Italy, but also to accelerate its international expansion, which already sees the company present in a few European markets, but definitely with big ambitions of accelerating that international growth over the coming months and years.
In your future plan as Team Ventures, are you planning to bet on some other Italian rising stars, Italian new technology champions?
Absolutely, we are looking at the space literally every day. We are looking at potential new investments, but the strategy would my narration of the strategy wouldn't be complete if I until I haven't told you about one of the actually essential points of our venture capital strategy, which is partnering with funds, and specifically partnering with a fund that we've picked, which is United Ventures. So United Ventures is one of the leading venture capital firms in Italy, and we have decided to sort of work together with them to have United Ventures as our partner in most of our venture capital activities going forward. Therefore, recently as a few months ago, we have announced that Team Ventures will be a cornerstone investor in a new venture capital fund, which will be launched and managed by United Ventures. This venture capital fund is called United Ventures T-Growth. As the word says, as the name says, obviously it is a growth-focused fund. So something that probably the Italian ecosystem needs today. There's a lot of early-stage funds, VC funds, but now it's time also for the Italian ecosystem to sort of move one step forward and start supporting startups in their later phases, in their growth phase.
Yeah, the move to the late stage is something that is probably the missing piece
right.
For Europe. France, probably UK is definitely the one that is more ahead in the game. France is definitely moving strongly. Probably you wrote about the TB initiative launched by the government, trying to involve all the corporates in pushing the late stage segment, and Germany is doing something similar. So I think it's much needed move. And talking about the investment in United Ventures, so you will be LP in the
we will be fund. That's correct. We will be an LP, but we are a cornerstone investor, so we'll have some special rights in this because we really contributed to the birth of this new fund. It will be a 150 to 180 million fund when fundraising will be completed. We have recently announced the closing, the first closing of the fund, which is a bit above 100 million, the 100 million mark, which also marks the start of operations for the fund. So we are now waiting for their first investment, which might come sometime soon. And this is a growth-focused fund, which will look at different, digital technologies ranging from cloud, artificial intelligence to Internet of Things, industrial IoT, retail IoT. It will look at cybersecurity and other adjacent spaces to what a company like ours does. And obviously, it's an independent fund, as it should be. It will be run independently.
Led by very, very smart people.
Led by very smart, well-reputed, strong reputation, also at an international level. With important track record, but obviously Team's presence is not negligible. Why? Because also in that fund, how much
is your size?
Team has committed 16 million euros to that fund, and
out of the overall 200.
Yeah, correct. Roughly, yeah.
So about 1/3.
A third of the fund. That's the goal. That's the target. And our presence is important. Why is it important? Because it might allow some of the companies that will be invested by the fund to actually start building collaborations with the leading LP in that fund. Collaborations that we will benefit from, but they can also potentially benefit from, and indirectly the fund will then benefit from by seeing their portfolio companies grow faster over the next few years.
And this is for the Italian piece. Then you have also an international strategy of investment.
That's right. Let me say, so this is an Italian fund, but it will invest internationally. It will invest internationally. There will be most likely an Italian angle in most of what they do, but the Italian angle might also just be allowing international startups to establish or expand their presence in Italy, both as a market or as a R&D center or whatever. And and obviously we as Team might actually play a role in helping some of these startups go down that route. But yeah, as you correctly mentioned, we are also a limited partner in an American fund, a US-based venture capital fund, which is called Northgate. A few years back, Team Ventures invested as one of three major LPs in a mostly telco-focused VC fund. This fund is now has just entered really its divestment phase, so it completed building up its portfolio, and now it's following its portfolio companies and sort of enhancing the value of each of its portfolio companies in the second 5 years of life of the fund. And there's a lot of very, very interesting players. We recently had our first exit from that fund, which was Metaswitch, a company was acquired by Microsoft just a few months ago. But if you look at what's left in that portfolio, it is a very rich and very interesting portfolio of companies that we are also talking to in order to consider whether there are collaborations that we can establish between Team, what we're doing in Italy and in Brazil, and some of the technologies that these companies have developed and are developing. And there are some very promising discussions ongoing these days.
So just to wrap it up, so Team Venture has, let's say, is playing at two different levels as LP of four-party funds. I would say very, very selective strategy, a few funds. Absolutely. When you have an anchor investor's role, and then you have your direct investment route that they want to follow through Satispay, and it might be follow again.
Correct.
So this is quite interesting. So just to wrap up our conversation and looking at what a player like Team today is doing on the open innovation arena, correct me if I'm wrong, so substantially currently you're focused on two main pillars. Number one is the venture client model through the newly reshaped WCap initiative that substantially is mostly looking for finding partnership with mature international and national scaleups to probably to grow together, make revenue together, or getting some operational efficiencies. And on the other hand, you have investment angle that is through a dedicated vehicle, is not a CVC fund, it's mostly an evergreen, but substantially it's a separate entity from Team, despite fully controlled, and you have you invest indirectly as anchor investor in a few selected fund, and directly where you see some strategic alignment. Final question.
I couldn't have done it better. Thanks.
Thank you. Final question for you. This is again the typical question that I ask to all my CVC guests in my conversation is looking at a CVC fund, how much is the strategic angle and how much is the financial angle relevant? What you're looking first?
Right. In general, it depends, but in our case, the strategic angle is definitely dominant. We have made a clear decision early on in our strategizing phase of what to do in the venture capital space, and our approach is definitely strategic, which doesn't mean that we are not looking for returns. We are investing extremely selectively only in companies or funds that we believe can generate very attractive returns, but we would never do so without a very significant strategic synergy, strategic angle to the investment. So you will not see us invest in areas that are clearly out of our scope. There might be an extremely promising, biotech startup that might reach out to us, extremely promising investment from a financial standpoint. But if it's out of scope for us, we will not be looking at it. But strategic also has definitely a broader meaning today for the team group than it did a few years ago. Because as I told you, as our strategy is to go beyond connectivity, strategic today means many more things than it would have meant only a few years back.
This is a very, very good topic, and that opened up my very last question, because that was supposed to be the last question, but that is, again, typically, one of the main issues or corporate venture capital funds are that, yes, you are supporting the strategic play of your company, meaning that you are helping building the new team that is the company that is going beyond connectivity, just mentioned. But at the same time, to a certain point, you need to show the value that you are producing on a recurring basis. And that's open up the big topic that is, what KPIs do a CVC fund use in order to measure their own activity? And this is a big discussion we're having with most of the main players internationally. Because again, yes, it's clear that we are building the new company. It's clear that we know we are investing ahead of business. But investing ahead of business means that what you're doing has no impact on the P&L today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, but probably you are helping to reshaping the strategic orientation of the company, and you're helping to building a new company going beyond what you're currently doing. How do you measure? Which KPI are you using internally? Because at a certain point, particularly in large organizations that are subject to sometimes to reorganization, if you're not able to properly show the value and measure properly at a certain point, again, the full vision might be questioned.
Absolutely. But, as you mentioned, I think at the beginning of our chat, I have the luck and privilege today of wearing two hats within the company. So I am CEO of Team Ventures, but I'm also the head of business development for the team group. And as part of that, actually, I'm also managing Team's open innovation program, Team WCap. So for us, it's quite simple in a way. I don't want to oversimplify it, but our open innovation, because it's not, but we try to simplify it also for ourselves. It is important, and our open innovation initiative is the one that is developing collaboration with startups and scale-ups, and that those collaborations are looking at developing short-term results. If we collaborate with a startup or scale-up, regardless of whether it is also part of our portfolio, Team Ventures portfolio or not, if we, once we're collaborating with them, that collaboration has clear goals and KPIs and metrics that we track on a near-term basis, month after month, week after week in some cases. But then Team Ventures also has a bit of a different perspective. So Team Ventures invests very selectively, as I said, and when we do make those investments, yes, on one hand, most likely we will have a collaboration that is active, and that collaboration needs to bring bear fruits, in the near to midterm, let's say. But in parallel, we want to see that those startups are also helping us lay the foundations for the team of tomorrow. So with those startups that are part of our portfolio, of our Team Ventures portfolio, we're also looking at a bit of a different set of metrics, which helps us understand whether that is the startup has set itself and is setting us also on a path towards potentially disrupting even some of the spaces and industries that we operate in, and whether they are still at the forefront, whether they are still one of the leading players in that arena internationally.
Sounds like a good plan. So
then time will tell. We're just getting started with this strategy.
Unfortunately, is true everything and everywhere. So again, it's not just the two of us. So we will see, but at least it looks like a quite well laid out plan, and we are really excited to starting our collaboration with you guys, and
so are we.
We're excited to see your further progress in the coming months. Thank you, Carlo, for this conversation.
Thank you, Alberto.